So, what made you come to Pakistan?
It's the second biggest Muslim country in the world.
Okay.
So the tour is intended to show what we can take from the West and what we can reject from the West from an Islamic perspective. Of course, Pakistan is a power. It's really the strongest Muslim country in the world. And so if Pakistan is rectified, the entire Muslim world can be rectified. So definitely Pakistan's is the key Muslim country, I think, really.
Liberalism is the biggest competitor to Islam at this point in time. If you go back into the history of Pakistan itself, British East India Company, comes in, and they're coming in with their ideologies now, where they have now rejected concept of the hereafter, the concept of the soul, and now they're moving towards more materialistic ideas.
These systems are not going to bring a change. What we need to go back to is the very teachings, because people are actually realizing this. And I think may Allah protect us, may Allah protect our brothers and all the duat out there. YC plays a very important role, although we're getting a lot of backlash from all corners. But what I see is to be able to bring that chain reaction where people actually start to realize like this is where our salvation lies. And I think we need to keep on hitting it. I know we will like not free from faults. We'll make a lot of mistakes.
Do people watch
I used to train. I've taken a break because of injuries. It's been a long time.
Oh, really, bro?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Jiu-jitsu, kickboxing.
Krav Maga as well.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Nobody teaches Krav Maga.
Krav Maga.
Yeah.
So where is it? What's the best club in Karachi? As well?
K7, currently not much options. It's just a trend building up because certain athletes over here have participated in some tournaments. So Lahore and Karachi are the bases at the moment where people are taking some interest. They're into self-defense. So kickboxing is one thing.
But let me tell you, people from Balochistan and people from the northern side of Pakistan, they're like, like how Khabib trains. These people train very organically like that, like on the mountains.
Harsh environment
not really wrestling bears or anything, but going up and down mountains all the time. I mean, any normal hiker, for example, would take maybe 3 hours doing one particular stretch. They would do it in 45 minutes and without breaking a sweat.
So how has your experience been up till now? Meeting people in Pakistan, Karachiites?
Bro, like I said before, it's like, it's quite similar to Cairo.
Okay. In a good way or a bad way?
Well, I like Cairo. I like Egypt. So I think it's a good way. It feels almost like home. I'm not going to say it's because obviously I don't speak Urdu and I don't know the culture very well, but it feels almost like home. It doesn't seem like an alien environment. It feels like I get what this is about. I understand how these people are driving and why they're driving like this. I understand the style of environment. Right. I get it. So I like Karachi.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to love it. Especially when you have brothers like Zia Bhai with us after a long time.
Yeah.
On Wajihuddin podcast. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
For sure.
Sir, for sure. How you been, Zia Bhai?
Good.
All good?
How are you?
How's it going? I'm actually continuing my podcast after a long break.
Really?
Yeah, after a long break. It's just like...
Where have you been?
Things were here and there. I didn't know. I was getting regularly we were doing podcasts. I wanted to be able to come up with certain topics, but I think it was kind of getting monotonous.
Okay.
And everybody was doing podcasts. I wanted to be able to take some time off, be able to see. And of course, a lot of things happening in life. But yes, we're back.
So what an amazing thing to start off with by having
amazing thing
such an esteemed guest as myself.
As myself.
As part of your
Hijab
podcast.
was laughing like this in restaurant.
And whoever this fellow is.
Wow.
Subhanallah.
So, what made you come to Pakistan?
It's one of the second biggest Muslim country in the world.
Okay.
And from what I understand, there's a lot of influence here, Western influence, and I think that we need to understand what that means, how that is. I'm obviously born and raised in the West. So the tour is intended to show what we can take from the West and what we can reject from the West from an Islamic perspective. And so that's one thing. The other thing is, of course, Pakistan is a power. It's really the strongest Muslim country in the world, in my opinion. And so if Pakistan is rectified, the entire Muslim world can be rectified.
I think Hamza said the same thing.
Did he?
Hamza said that I see a lot of potential over here, and I'm not here as a savior, but to be able to educate and empower what I have, to people over here, because I see a lot of potential and I see this country standing up to represent the Muslim community?
To the contrary, I think that it's Pakistan that should be saving us. It's not me that should be saving them. We're talking about a nuclear power country with 230 million people. If Pakistan makes one move, I mean, that's so definitely Pakistan's is the key Muslim country. I think really that if things happen in it, then the Muslim world is taking a different direction. So I have to come to a place like this.
Okay, so I'll ask this question from both of you. Why YC and why hijab?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
I would say that, with Youth Club, we've been dealing with a lot of issues connected to liberalism and secularism and feminism and atheism and all of these different schisms. Alhamdulillah, brother, Mohammad Hijab has been doing some really brilliant work. I'm not trying to be like, make him fly up in the clouds by saying these things, but alhamdulillah, he's been doing a lot of good work. He recently did, I think, a series called Londonia, which was actually specifically on this particular topic. So we thought, it's high time. We've invited so many other speakers from the UK. Brother Hamza Zorsas has been here, Subur Ahmed, Imran Hussain, and Brother Adnan Rashid has been coming very regularly. It was high time that we introduced the man himself.
Brother Adnan is a Pakistani.
Oh, he's a Pakistani, but since he's now living there, so he's still considered as, one of them.
Good. That's good. So in terms of UK and Pakistan, of course, over here, a lot of people are influenced by that European kind of Eurocentric kind of a thing, schooling wise. And we see some people being inclined towards these liberalism and all these aspects. But to a certain degree, alhamdulillah, majority of the people are not influenced by it. How much of it has been able to affect the people of UK?
Liberalism?
Yeah.
It's the state religion now, effectively. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about, actually, this is what I say to my children. I was walking with them, and they say, what is the religion of these people, right? And a lot of them are not Christian. So I say to them, effectively, their religion is liberalism, and my children are young. Because what is religion? Religion is effectively a way of life of some sort. Now, there's different definitions of what religion is. I'm not going to go into a technical discussion. We can talk about it maybe one of the lectures. But the point is this is the state, effectively, religion of the Western people. Social liberalism. And so it's not something which I would say, quote unquote, affects them. I think it's something that they live by. It's like asking to what extent does Islam affect Muslims in Pakistan? It's in many ways what they live by. So that's how I would frame it.
So how challenging is it for your kids? I would want our local audience to be able to know, because a lot of people are, due to the current situation of the country, want to be able to go abroad, settle down over there. As a practicing Muslim, your priority being Islam, how challenging is it for you to be able to raise your kids over there, seeing that this whole thing is being state religion now?
Honestly, I've traveled the world. I've been to, 35 countries or something, right? And London as a city I couldn't say it's a very bad place for Muslims to be. In fact, I would say it's a very good place for Muslims to be, on balance, because there's 8 million people in London, and 1.5 million of them are Muslims. So we have a very strong, established Muslim community. And now, am I comparing it with the Muslim world? It can be compared to parts of the Muslim world from some perspectives. Like, for example, if you want to do Dawah, there's a lot of the Muslim world. There's 59 Muslim majority countries that you won't be able to do Dawah in that way. And so, to answer your question, I think there's benefits and there's advantages and disadvantages. We have a Muslim community. Well, we have to look at the positives, I think. In London, there's a lot of things we take for granted. I think it's a strong city, frankly. I mean, the Economist considers it to be an alpha plus city, not just an alpha city or a beta city. No, it's alpha plus city, and which means if you want something to eat there's going to be a lot of variety. If you want to study there's a lot of variety. And if you get sick in London, there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of treatment options. So I could complain about the fact that, okay, well, there's, these transgender movements and they're pushing this and they're doing that and all these kind of things. But on the flip side, there are some positives as well. So I think we take the good and we try and mitigate the bad as much as we can. And so long as we have a good family environment where we're teaching children, wherever they may be in the world. I mean, there are people in Pakistan and Egypt, where I'm originally from, who are more westernized than Muslims in the West themselves, which I think is quite ironic, actually.
How much of an atheism is an issue in the UK? Because you've been dealing with the audience over there, so how much was really taking a higher percentage over there?
Well, let me speak statistically on the matter, because I've actually done something called the Scientific Deceptions of the New Atheists, and it's been published on Sapience. And from my understanding, in the UK, there's a woman called Linda Woodhead, Dr. Linda Woodhead. She's a statistician or a demographer or something like that. I can't remember exactly what her specialism is, but she is seen as one of the top of her industry. And she actually does a study on how much first of all, she defines what is atheism, because there's a difference between atheism and irreligiosity. So someone can be an agnostic but not actually classify themselves an atheist.
True.
So she differentiates between the two notions, the irreligious, or let's say, for example, the nons. They call them in demography NONES, which means like you're not affiliated to religion, and someone who actually classifies themselves as an atheist. Now, a strident atheist, this is the terminology that was used by Richard Dawkins, okay? According to Linda Woodhead in her studies, there's about 5% of the population, strident atheists, of the UK population. And this was, I think, in 2019, 2020. That's the last time she carried some kind of a poll or found out that information using something called British attitude surveys. The point being is that there's a lot of people that are not religious, but atheism, it's as represented as Islam. I mean, there's more Muslims than there are strident atheists, according to this set of data in the United Kingdom. And Muslims are much more active. They do rituals. They've got institutions. So Islam is stronger than atheism in the UK. I know that's very difficult to maybe understand. Maybe someone wouldn't understand this. But if you frame it in the way I've just framed it, objectively, Islam is stronger than atheism as an institution, as a demography, as the people that carry out rituals, as a sector, economic sector, than atheism. However, as I say, atheism is not the direct competitor to Islam. The current direct competitor to Islam is liberalism. That's the main competitor. It's not Christianity anymore. Christianity is maybe a second or third competitor, but the main world competitor to Islam as a way of life is liberalism, and it has different formulations and permutations. So you can have liberal feminism, for example, which is, I think, the most fashionable variety. You have liberal feminism, or kind of second wave feminism mixed with liberalism. That kind of thing is what we're dealing with. That is the main competitor, not atheism. Some people can have atheist doubts, but it's not really the main thing that we're dealing with.
Zabai, I'll come to you with a very serious question, and I would like you to be able to elaborate this in a very detailed manner, because I think the vast majority in our country do not actually understand the dangers of what is going around in this world. And why we followed Hijab and why we've collaborated with him, and the idea of how liberalism is actually affecting our younger audience, especially the school-going audience and the college-going audience, and how much do we need to emphasize on this? Why? I've seen you talk about this in your podcast. I've seen you talk about this, emphasize on this in your university lectures. Why? I want you to be able to make our audience understand why is it so important to be able to talk about this. I do understand that majority of our masses is emotionally very attached to the religion, but why are we taken as a threat? Because a lot of conventional mindset individuals don't actually get why YC is talking about this. So why YC is focusing on this right now?
Okay, so as Brother Hijab mentioned that how it's liberalism is the biggest competitor to Islam at this point in time. If you go back into the history of Pakistan itself, and you go back to 1857 with the War of Independence and all of that, that's when the British East India Company comes in, and you have the British Empire coming in. It was at that time that they pretty much, after the post-Enlightenment era, they're coming in with their ideologies now, where they have now rejected, for all practical purposes, God, the concept of the hereafter, the concept of the soul, and now they're moving towards more materialistic ideas like, let's study the universe, let's study the human body instead of the soul now, because previously these subjects were very, very important. So now when that shift begins to happen, and it's happening in Pakistan now for the first time, they basically segregated between the classical Islamic traditions and the modern secular sciences. So anyone who wanted to study, for example, religion or deen were segregated to the madrasa, and they were asked to just be there. And you can worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all you like over there, but now the world will work according to secular principles. So they pretty much took Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of the curriculum. So now we had English, and we had Urdu language, and we had chemistry, physics, mathematics, whatever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was, like, for example, left only to a very small subject called Islamic studies. And that too was a very small subject because it was only 50 marks in the grand scheme of things. So every other subject gets 100, but poor little Islamic studies gets 50 marks. And even if you fail that subject, it's not a problem because you'll still get promoted to the next class. But God forbid if you fail mathematics, you're going to repeat that year. So they won't let you move forward. So what happened was that people now started to move their kids into this education system, which was pretty much taking them away from this holistic understanding of Islam. So they don't mind you practicing Islam in your own house. You can worship, you can pray 5 times, you can do whatever you want. But you know, that holistic understanding of Islam, that you are a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you worship Him in any situation that you are. That's kind of something that's taken out. And so during this process, you have to understand how Western culture, when it comes in, it's coming through the movie industry, it's coming through the media. So you already have the education system, top that up with Hollywood, and then you top that up with the MTV and so on and so forth. And then you have the literature coming in, and the comic books, and the Marvel and DC and all of that stuff. And so you're now beginning to teach your kids certain values. So what starts off as a trend, that the latest trend is that you're watching TV. The latest trend is that you're going to the cinema. The latest trend is that, you know, these authors are really cool. They're writing some great stuff. Soon, trends become part of a culture. And so when that becomes part of our culture, which is the Islamic culture, you can say, what happens now is that previously people thought, for example, that, you know, fornication is wrong. Zina is wrong. But now that trend becomes the culture. So you have fornication, you know, girlfriend, boyfriend, now boyfriend also becoming part of the culture. And so the only difference is people were homosexuals before as well. Maybe in 1900s in Pakistan, there were some homosexuals as well. I'm pretty sure zina was happening at that time as well. But at that time, the culture was everybody thought I was bad. Everybody thought that was sinful, and if somebody was doing it, they were, you know, repenting in their heart. They were feeling guilt, remorse, regret. Now what's happening is, because it's become part of the culture, people have been watching too many episodes of Friends and Beverly Hills 90210 and all of that stuff. Now it's like, if you do it, that's perfectly normal. And if you don't support it, you, Brother Wajih, are a homophobe, transphobe, misogynistic, bigoted, radical Islamist, fundamentalist, whatever that might be. So I think because that shift is taking place, what we're trying to do is, I like to say that we are trying to defend the boundaries of Islam from penetration from any side. Like when you try to attack the ideological boundaries of Pakistan, that's where we have to be in order to defend that, you know, we will not allow liberalism to creep in. We will not allow secular values to creep in. We have our own Sharia to look at. We have our own Islamic tradition to look at. Values, and alhamdulillah, it's something to be proud of.
True.
So that's what we're pretty much doing, that we're trying to make Islam relevant, and we're trying to teach people that, you know, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to us the way of leading a life which is a pious life, a righteous life, and a life which is good in this life and good in the next. Just because you're a religious person doesn't mean that you're only looking at the akhirah. We make dua, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina azaban nar. So we pray for goodness in this life and that life, and that's, I think, what needs to be communicated to our youth today.
I think you're very spot on with the fact that you just said, because myself, my experience that I've been teaching Islamic studies to these so-called liberal schools for the past 18-20 years.
Really?
And my experience has been that they treat the subject in a very theoretical manner, like the UK-based IGCSE.
Yeah.
And the one head examiner, and I asked her the question because she was constantly emphasizing for the fact that we want the understanding of the kids to grow. We want the understanding of the kids to grow. So I asked her the very question. It's like, the very understanding based question are 4 marks question, whereas the mugging up part is like 10 marks question. The kids are automatically focusing towards that, and there's so much to do. But the whole idea of, there was this one, Pakistan's one of the most top liberal schools, where they would have a new building and an old building. Now understand this whole thing. The old building and the new building. You've been to that school. They would keep Islamiyat and Urdu in that old building. So that subliminally, the students were actually getting that impression that this subject is secondary.
Not worth it.
And on top of that, the very reason that I ask you this question is because we've seen and experienced this ourselves in our lives. Back in the old days, people used to consider sin to be sin. This transition of people not realizing that they need to address the very issues of the society. Social media has made everything accessible, everything out in the open. People on Instagram, they're just going to put it out there. People want to be part of that social pressure victim, and eventually they're giving into it. If you don't talk about these issues slowly by slowly, because we grew up with a childhood experience, we have certain values in our head. The younger generation do not have that. The very first thing they're seeing are these influencers. They're seeing these Instagram models. They're seeing these people talking about Lamborghinis, about big things, about being successful, criteria, all of this. We don't address these spiritual values. We have an entire generation, a couple of years, turning atheists.
Wajih bhai, I'll just quickly add something from an anecdotal perspective. I started teaching Islamic studies at a university a few years ago. And one of the first things that I asked them was that, can I have a look at your exam paper? What does the exam paper look like? Because I wanted to see that the course outline that they're offering, what are they, questioning people on by the end of the semester, for example. So when I looked at the exam paper, the kind of questions they had were the type where you could be a completely non-practicing Muslim and you could still ace that exam paper. You could still get an A. For example, questions like, how many Sahaba participated in the Battle of Badr? In which year did the event of Al-Isra wal-Miraj take place? Which city did the Prophet ﷺ migrate to? So now all of these are good trivia questions. They're good historic questions. Somebody could just memorize them and ace it. But are there any questions that will allow a student to reflect upon his deen, upon his way of life, or to understand the true purpose of our lives and to do something practical with it? With all other subjects, you find that you actually get a project to do. You have to work on it. You do something practical. You have to do something in the field. You have to gain certain experiences and so on. But in Islamic studies, a lot of people might say, but they teach Islamic studies in every single grade, every single year. But the thing is, the way that they teach it, my problem lies there. It's, first of all, as you said, it's given a very backseat kind of approach, very dry, secondary thing. And even in teaching that, it's only limited to the very, very, very basic things. And if you can just memorize these things and just parrot them out on the day of the exam, you're good to go. You have a good understanding according to our education system of Islam. Whereas I would say that, for example, going through GCSE exams and so on, I remember from 8th grade to 9th grade when we did our O-levels, in 8th grade we were doing English, Urdu, mathematics, science, history, geography, Islamic studies, and so on, right? So when we moved to O-levels, GCSEs, science split into 3 subjects. So now, previously it was general science, now it's chemistry, physics, biology. And each subject gets 2 books. So we have 2 books of physics, 2 of biology, 2 of chemistry. Mathematics, we got 4 books. 4 books of mathematics.
All colorful, all very good colorful, quality paper.
And English, we had 8 books in 2.5 years. So we did 8 books of English in 2.5 years. Islamic studies, it was a thin book by Farkhanda Noor. I'm sure you've done the same one. A very thin book.
It's outdated now.
And I think it's still in print. It's still in circulation somehow.
CI has actually...
So again, that book is just about, Salah and Zakat, and you have Hajj, pilgrimage, very, very basic stuff. So I would imagine that if you're sending a child to IGCSEs doing O-levels, if you've expanded on, the sciences and mathematics to such a vast degree, at least you would have Islamic studies, which was in 8th grade, a simple subject, now splitting up into 4 as well. So you have tafsir, you have hadith, you have fiqh maybe, you have seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. But the thing is, that's not a priority for us. So because that's not a priority, therefore, generally, people would not make it a priority. Nobody wants to say, oh, you know what, after I graduate, I'm inshallah going to become a Maulana. I'm going to inshallah, go to a Medina University or Al-Azhar or something. How many of the youth in Pakistan are saying that? Even if they say that, their parents would be the first one to tell them you've lost your mind, because you're pursuing a career which is, from their perspective, an unsuccessful career. There is no khair in this. There is no benefit in that. So therefore, now we have the whole mindset where people try to attribute Islam with something that's backward. And so what we're trying to attempt is that we're not saying everybody needs to become an alim or to become some mufti or something. No. But what we are saying is, you have to be practicing. If you say you're a Muslim, if you say you're upon La ilaha illallah, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands you in Surah Az-Zariyat, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. You have been created for the worship of Allah. So if you are an engineer, or you're a doctor, or you're a lawyer, or whatever it might be, you are still a slave of Allah. And you can never do anything that will be displeasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To the best of your ability, everybody makes mistakes, we understand that. But you have to try to be the best version of yourself as a Muslim. Not that you put Islam in the backseat, or you make Islam as one of the little components in your life which you bring up as and when required. It's not supposed to be that way.
I think YC has been able to break that stereotype, and people will make up videos, they tag us on those videos on Instagram, and it's like, we want to be like Maulvis.
Alhamdulillah. I hope so.
When you talk about Brother Hijab, and correct me if I'm wrong over here, controversy and Brother Hijab name go hand in hand. Is that right? So when we started promoting you in terms of you visiting over here, we got a lot of hate for it. So your videos started circulating regarding Usul Salasa, the two statements, stuff about you calling people on your podcast, though you were busy sending your clarifications, stuff like that. Is this the same kind of issue in the UK? Because we keep dealing with it, even in our own case. Ziabai riding a bike, he gets hate for it. People talk about a lot of us not wearing the traditional shalwar kameez and being able to come on screen, use a lot of touring around and all of that. So what's with the UK thing? I'm sure there are several groups in every country, very hardcore, hardline, always trying to pull a leg and be able to do all the rad.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as I see it, in terms, there's, as you know, there's fiqh and there's aqidah, right? So there's jurisprudence and then there's creed. And there are different groups in Islam, all claimants of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, within the madhahib al-fiqhiyya, within the different schools of fiqh, and also within the creedal schools. The way I would categorize myself is a Hanbali pragmatist. And in the sense that, and for example, in fiqh, there's three, in my opinion, main approaches. The approach number one is the tarjih, fiqh tarjih approach. So a great person that would kind of, I would say, exemplify this approach in the Muslim world is Sheikh Albani. Okay, great muhaddith, one of the great scholars of the 20th century, massive figure. Now, what was his approach? He would say, okay, this is the hadith, and this hadith is stronger than this hadith, or if you don't believe in this hadith, then you're not following the right opinion. And the idea of tarjih is favoring one opinion over another opinion. The strength of that is that it does actually give you hands-on kind of dealing with the hadith itself, which for the madhabis, some of them, or some of us, I should say, because I'm one of them myself in a sense, would not feel that close proximity to. The weakness of that approach is that it can create effectively a dispute, because someone will say to another person that, okay, well, you're not praying with your hands in this way, or this, you should be putting your hands in this place, and you're going against this hadith. And Sheikh Albani himself was quite staunch with this. For example, in the Hanbali madhab, I'm not sure if you heard this or know this, but when you come up from ruku'ah, you put your hands like this, right?
Yeah.
Now, in the Hanbali method, there's two views. Either you put it on your chest, or you put it on your kind of belly button area, and both are legitimate. And Mirdawi mentions that in himself. But the point is that Albani, for example, he responds to that and he says that it's a bid'ah.
Yeah.
وَلَوْ قَالَ بِهَا أَحْمَد.
Yeah,
Even if
yeah.
Ahmad said it himself, it's
Yeah.
a bid'ah. So this shows you the extent to which tarjih,
Yeah.
it can be. I remember seeing one student who followed that opinion. He saw me praying in that way and he was really giving me a hard time. So I think that can be a problem, you see, with that approach. The second approach is the madhab approach, which is doing taqleed of a particular madhab. And this is an extremely safe approach, and I think the most appropriate for a mass audience. However, when you do that, if someone goes against a madhab with their own madhab, then the person also can become very protective and say, well, you're doing this against us. But that madhab was never meant to be perfect. It's an attempt to interpret the religion.
True.
It's not a perfect rendition of the religion itself. So if you're Hanafi or Hanbali or a Shafi'i, you have to respect that there are other madhabs out there. And all of these four madhabs are part of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So a madhabi can be like that. And another thing is, with the madhab approach and with the fiqh tarjih approach, is that it can be not as pragmatic. And this leads me to a third approach, which these people here, I don't consider myself part of them, but I sympathize with them to some extent, not to the extent which can be problematic, which are the maqasidis. So the maqasidis are people like Al-Qaradawi. Now, you'll see some fatwas coming out from people like that, which are, in my opinion, extremely, almost laughably problematic, comically problematic. For example, about, actually, I don't want to mention examples. Like maybe one example.
I'm aware of it.
You might be aware of the
Yeah.
examples. So I'm not talking about taking loans.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the swimming for the women. I'm not sure if you've come across that one. A woman can wear certain swim. I'm not going to go into it. But when you take the maslaha card and just maslaha means benefits, communal benefits, which is one of the masadr of Sharia, and you just go wild with it, then effectively you can stop even caring about the individual piece of dalil, which can be extremely problematic, and I don't think that's healthy either. So when I say I'm a Hanbali pragmatist, it means that for the most part I follow the Hanbali madhab. But it doesn't mean to say that in all situations I have to follow that madhab, especially for nawazil. If there's situations which are new now, or a situation which is like it requires some level of ijtihad, I'll go to scholars and we'll have discussion or this and that. And we will talk about maqasid of Sharia. Because if we don't do that, then we will be too constrained. We won't be able to do things that we need to do in order to get the job done. And I can give you literally scores and dozens of examples from the Sahaba themselves who employed this approach. One of this, I'll just give you one example, just for the sake of argument. And Adnan Rashid, was one day in his house. He's a fantastic coin collector, as well as being a great historian. He was showing me his coins, and some of the coins that he had were of in the Sahaba's time, but they also had Christian symbols on them. But the Sahaba were effectively pragmatic enough to realize that if they removed all symbols relating to the Roman Empire, they wouldn't be able to make this currency effective. Now, if, for example, imagine if we had a currency, I'm not saying we should do this, and I'm not saying the times are the same, but which had such symbols on them. What I'm saying is that sometimes you've got to look at the major objective. Now, the question is when. That is the question. And that's where the fight is. That's where the scholarly work is to be done. I don't have the answers to this question. I can't tell you this is where it should be done and this is where it shouldn't be done. But I can tell you that it should be done. And that's where the scholars need to discuss. But if someone is always doing tarjih, not thinking about maqasid as much, not even respecting usul al-fiqh at all, attacking the madhabs, that's not an approach I take. So because now I know what I am, effectively, which is I am a Hanbali pragmatist, in the sense that I'm able to, and I'm not talking epistemologically, I'm talking here jurisprudentially, because I am a Hanbali pragmatist from that perspective. If someone comes and says, well, you're not the same as what I am, then I shrug my shoulders and say, of course I'm not. I mean, you're expecting me to, and by the way, Ibn Abdul Wahhab himself was a Hanbalite. Just as an interesting point, he actually followed the madhab quite stringently, actually. I mean, obviously he had his own views and stuff like that, but the point I'm making, generally speaking, is, of course, when you proclaim this is what I am, there are going to be people who will come and say, well, you don't agree with me here and you don't agree with me there. you don't do this. There's going to be difference of opinion. And to that I can say, whatever position you take, it's only natural that you're going to have people that oppose that position. If you're not capable of accepting that, then you shouldn't be in the public sphere, because that comes with the territory. So that's what I would say.
Let me share one thing with you guys. A friend in Canada, he's very active in the Muslim community over there. So he works in a corporate culture. So he actually contacted me and sent me some links. It's like the Jewish community is working on a very different kind of dawah. No more lectures or this kind of activity. They're actually doing some
now we're talking, bro.
Screenplays.
Now we're talking.
Screenplays. And because of the fact that they're able to provide a kind of a new innovative, not in terms of religion, but a strategy, it is more effective with the younger audience.
Akhi, look, in the Quran, for example, Allah says, نَحْنُ نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ أَحْسَنَ الْقَصَصِ. Now, if you think about that, now Allah doesn't say, which means we will tell you the best story. This is in chapter 12 of the Quran, right? We will tell you the best story, which is the story of Joseph. By the way, the story of Yusuf, if you look at the IMDb top 100 movies, what's the number one movie? It's Shawshank Redemption. If you look at the storyline of that particular movie, it's extremely similar to the story of Yusuf in the Quran. Why? Because it's the idea of redemption. Idea of this guy's been oppressed, and then he came back and got his own, right? So it's structurally, it's that kind of a structure of a story, okay? It's so powerful that it led, because according to the IMDb rankings, they use it on rankings and voting and all that kind of stuff. It leads people to remember it and it has an impact on them. Now, going back to the point, this is that نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص. We will recite upon you the best, narrate upon you the best of stories. It doesn't say نحن نحج عليك أحسن الحجج. It doesn't say that we were going to tell you the best arguments. Although in another part of the Quran it says وَتِلْكَ حُجَّتُنَا آتَيْنَاهَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ عَلَى قَوْمِهِ نَرْفَعُ دَرَجَاتٍ مَنْ نَشَاءُ. These are the arguments we gave to Abraham for against his people, and that we raise whoever we want in degrees. So arguments have their place. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Allah says in the Quran that argue with them in the ways of better. However, in terms of the best stories, this has always been the next level, bro. I'm going to be honest with you. Okay, we've got debates, we've got lectures, we've got dawah, we've got all that kind of stuff. That's level 1, okay? Level 2 and 3 is acting, is screenplaying, it's creating narrative. Now, you said it right. I don't know who said, I think it was, yes, you said it in the beginning of this. I was paying attention. And you made a really good point. You said, look, it's a compound effect. You have the education system, and then you have the Netflix, and then you have this and that. It's so powerful how they do it, because they get creative people to introduce characters, let's say homosexual characters, it could be feminist characters, it could be whatever, socially liberal characters, whatever. And it then makes you have a emotional relationship with them. Now, that's impervious to criticism. In other words, it's not like they're coming and saying, we are feminists and we believe in X, Y, and Z. Because as we've seen in the last 20 years, feminists have had a very poor track record with debates. Because when it comes to put your facts on the table, put your neck on the intellectual chopping board, it gets cut off. You get intellectually decapitated quite quickly. So they realize that we need to have a new approach. So the approach that they're having is they're putting it in these stories and these series and these movies, as you mentioned. And it's clever because they won't introduce it to you quickly. They'll warm you up in the first episode, second episode, third, fifth, and on the 10th episode, now you have, the emotional attachment. One of the homosexual characters gets shot, or one of the feminist characters does something independent, or whatever it may be. And it's a very clever strategy because it's impervious and unsusceptible to a kind of criticism. Now, what I'm saying is we're currently in the Dawah operating at level 1. We're going this place and that place, and lectures in these universities and debates with these people and chat shows, and we can beat them all in debates. I can guarantee you can beat them, I can beat them, because we have the truth. We're always going to beat them in the debate because we have an advantage. We have an unfair advantage. We have the truth on our side. But now we have to, I think, take it to the next level. The next level is things that you just talked about. Things like, okay, let's create narrative. How that's going to be, of course, you're going to have these people that want to pull you back and say to you, don't do this and don't do that and don't do this and that. Now, we have to listen to them to some extent, but if we listen to them fully, we will not be where we are, and we will not be able to get to where we need to be.
It's a very powerful point. if you would have asked me when I was at university what fiqh I was following, I would tell you I was following the fiqh of Hollywood. And the reason why I say that is because I was the kind of person who would consume Hollywood like maybe 3 movies a night sometimes. And whatever would come out of Hollywood, whatever sitcom, whatever movie, even if it wasn't really that popular, I would still watch it. And so over a period of time, without even me knowing, I kind of developed my own, being a Muslim, by the way, being a Muslim, raised in a Muslim household, developed my own fiqh. And that fiqh was everything that I learned from all of these things that I mentioned, like Beverly Hills 90210, Friends, all of that stuff, that, you know, it's okay to have a girlfriend. It's okay to be physical. It's okay to be intimate.
Yeah.
Just don't cheat on her. Just don't be a sleazeball. Don't be like this. So they created a kind of fiqh for you that this is acceptable. For example, Superman. Superman has Lois Lane. Batman had one girlfriend in one of the movies. Then he had another one. And then you have Spider-Man. Then you have James Bond, who might have
By the way, you know,
3 women in one
Wait
film.
a minute. What's wrong with that?
Right.
By the way, you know that the Superman story was inspired by the Christian sources.
Yeah.
The very idea of Superman being put in a space shuttle
type thing.
the story of Musa alayhi salam.
Yeah.
And being sent away from parents.
Yeah.
And the story of Batman,
Yeah.
Inspired by the idea of Isa alayhi salam not having parents. This was actually shared on a TED talk by a person because he was actually coming up with Muslim comic characters.
I also thought that Superman was some kind of a spin-off of Nietzsche's Übermensch.
Yeah, Übermensch, yeah.
Is that true as well?
It's true as well, yeah. And the thing is that, you know, when now looking back at you know, how my own evolution in fiqh and, you know, like going through these things and then finally coming towards Islam and then accepting and all of that stuff, I can now have an understanding of how cleverly they worked. I mean, if you look at as you mentioned, like, you know, you see how they've introduced homosexual characters from the 1980s onwards. So initially the homosexual character was the butt of all jokes, and it was something like a comic relief. Everybody laughed, oh, he's gay, and everybody would laugh at it, and people would be like, oh, so he's homosexual.
I heard they need it now. I heard that the Oscars say that you need to have homosexual representation.
Now you do.
Is that true?
That is 100% true. Now, in order to get an Oscar, you have to have X amount of, there's some percentage,
like
30%,
Asian characters or,
you know, this diversity and inclusion things,
exactly.
right? So you have to have either people in the camera crew or the film crew or the actors or the cast, or some team members have to be from the LGBTQ++ community. Otherwise, you're not going to get an Oscar.
So one of the powerful examples, and I know I'm going to get a backlash for this because this is in English and people are from the English audience category are going to be able to criticize this. But the biggest example, and I'm sure, I hope you get the example as well. Throughout these years from Bollywood, the way they have portrayed Germans as completely evil.
See, I don't know anything about Bollywood, so...
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Did you say Hollywood? The way they portrayed Germans throughout these years as completely evil.
Oh, yes.
Although there were issues from both sides, but the way
like
they've done
Die Hard.
Now people now...
You know, Die Hard, the film.
Hard,
yeah.
the
people are
one.
not going to be...
Even the third one. Simon Gruber.
Yeah.
They talk about Germans and the people, the impression they get in their mind is like so and so. Bad individuals, evil individuals, people who would basically do so and so. There were issues, but
Russians as well.
Yeah,
like.
actually, Russians as well.
Hollywood has gone through certain phases of having the boogeyman as Germans in the 1940s, for example. All the films were revolving around the most evil character would be a German. Then if you move further on, then it was the Russians with the Bond films and everything. And then later on, somewhere around the 90s, it was the Islamic radical terrorists.
I remember Rambo 4 at the end of the movie.
No, Rambo 4. Rambo 3.
Rambo 3, Rambo 4.
Rambo
at
3.
the end of the movie, they actually said this
Mujahideen
movie
was
is...
this Taliban was good.
Dedicated to the gallant warriors of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I remember the statement and they were like...
What did they say, sorry?
This movie is dedicated to the gallant warriors of Afghanistan.
Really, bro?
Yes, at the end of the movie. Yeah. Rambo 3, Rambo 4. Rambo 3, right?
Rambo 3.
Yeah. And after that, they went because they had to create a supporting group against the Russians.
Wow.
After that, 9/11 and Afghanistan people
Actually, before 9/11, they started it because they had True Lies coming in, I think, 1994.
Is that with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the
that
terrorist
was a
group is called-
Palestinian. The guy.
he was a Palestinian, and his group was called the Crimson Jihad. That's the name of the group.
Crimson
Yeah.
Jihad,
And
yeah.
then you had Steven Seagal fighting Islamic terrorists, and you had others. And then there was a movie that came before 9/11. It was called The Siege, and it was a very star-studded cast like Bruce Willis, Denzel Washington.
Advertising all of this.
This summer.
Now Bollywood, Indian cinema, is working on the same category.
Yeah.
Now they try to be able to show Pakistanis as now every time they're going to show a Muslim is going to be with a amulet,
Really, bro.
cap.
A prayer cap. yeah.
Do you-
Kajal. Even the guy who's flying a jet is wearing a kajal.
Yeah.
He's actually wearing a kajal.
Yeah.
And they would show a Pakistani Islamabad airport having a
Oh, really?
cardboard
Oh,
notice
shit.
board, stuff like that.
But I think I might be wrong. I've had my interaction with Indian media when some things happen in England and stuff like that, and I've had interaction with them. They seem a little bit sloppy with it. Like, in the West, they're a bit subtle. They know they're creative. They'll squeeze it in. They'll put it in.
Yeah.
Bollywood is in your face. It's like, okay, let's just get a Muslim terrorist character, and he'll be. It's it's a bit sloppy. It's I've never seen a film, Bollywood film.
You do want
in
to
my
go to
whole-
India. You
in
do
my whole
want to go
life.
to India, right?
In my whole life, I've never seen it. And
They're actually
nor do I want to.
they're actually losing it now. They're
Yeah.
coming up with such rip-offs that people are now actually laughing because they are so desperate in order to be able to create an impression of their neighbors in such a evil manner that they're actually exaggerating it. Like one person getting in the entire country, taking over the entire army, and then just saying this like, this is how we do it. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
So and they're living that kind of a lie. And the masses actually don't want this.
There is a way we can bypass. You might, someone's going to say, okay, well, you said that you're going to get to level 2 now and we're level 1. And how do we compete with Bollywood? There's maybe hundreds of billions of dollars in Hollywood. We're talking about trillions of dollars here.
True.
Like actually lots of trillions of dollars. So if you combine that, how do we go against it? And do you know there's one thing that beats all of that money putting into effect and all that? It's a good story.
Good story.
Now, let me explain. Because if you look at some of the best ever, the classics in the English-speaking world, for example, right? A lot of them have been made into films and series. A lot of them. Or if not, they're inspired by them. Harry Potter is a good example of that. Lord of the Rings is a good example of that. There are many other examples of that. The success is not just based on the effects and the money. Now, what I'm saying is that if we are able to create stories which are phenomenal stories, fantastic and meaningful stories, then we can effectively bypass a lot of... we could literally bypass a lot of the things that would otherwise be an obstacle for us in terms of money. And that's what Ahsan al-Qasas comes back. So what we need in the Ummah, we talk about, Islamic scholars and all those kind of things and engineers. And that. We need creative writers to come out and to put some of our struggles as Muslim people, some of our themes as Muslim people who believe in Islam into some of these stories in order to bring the Dawah to the next level effectively. I think that's really where it's at.
I think we're at the same situation how printing press was first opposed by and things went way far ahead. I think it's about time people understand that the scenarios are changing and Dawah element has to go level up.
Yeah, and if it doesn't...
And Ertugrul was one...
that's a great example.
That was a game changer. Although I found it a bit lame, but some scenes were actually... But it actually laid foundation for people to be able to understand, okay, this can be done.
Yeah,
now
because
people can actually...
The time period is talking about is... Like, if you look at historically, there's not much written about it. I don't know how they've been able to produce... I don't know how many seasons. We're talking about Uthman, right? It was like 1299.
I think there are a lot of seasons I wasn't able to follow it.
No, sorry, not Uthman. He's his father, really, effectively, right?
Yeah.
It's not even Uthman, it's his father.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen one single...
Ertugrul was the foundation for the Ottomans.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, what's written about him is maybe like...
Few pages. Hardly few pages.
Yeah.
Hardly know about Ertugrul. But the entire storyline has been able to...
And probably that's a good thing because then they can dramatize it themselves.
You can't verify it.
They want in it. Yeah.
I remember there's a 1957 film, black and white. It's called 12 Angry Men. And-
That's a great example. I
and
watched the
it's-
whole thing.
Yeah, it's all shot
1
in
hour.
one room.
Yeah.
The whole movie shot in one room. Why? Because it has a gripping storyline.
Yeah.
There you have it.
Yeah. So if you have a
Perfect.
good story, I mean, the special effects, obviously it adds value, it adds a lot of flavor to it. But if you have a good story, there are many examples out there where films have been made on almost very, very low budget, but the storyline has been so powerful that it's been in the hearts and minds of people for years and years to come.
Zia bhai,
Yeah,
you
that's
and
in the,
I-
sorry, that's in the IMDb top 100. That's number like 8 or 9 or something
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I have been from an era where Pakistani dramas used to be amazing.
Yeah.
The language, the culture, there's so many dramas. And
Speak for yourself. I'm Gen Z.
I'm Gen
No, I'm
Z.
just kidding.
I'm not talking about the black and white.
Sure.
What are your plans with regards to Pakistan? What do you plan to achieve? And action plan for a couple of years.
Do you know, let me tell you what I aim to achieve. Effectively, there's 2 things I can provide. Okay, it's not just the arguments, it's the attitudes. And attitudes eat arguments for breakfast, really. That's the truth of the matter. Because I believe that throughout the Muslim world, we do have somewhat of an inferiority complex. We do have it. I don't know, they call it the Gora complex.
Gora complex,
Is
yeah.
that what
They call it Gora complex.
So, and we have it everywhere, Put it this way. I think it's because that in the West, and not just the West, but let's say the West and its extensions, or those which it influences, have clean streets and tall buildings. We assume that because they have clean streets and tall buildings, that we should follow them in everything. But as Carl Jung said, he says that the West are technological giants, but moral midgets. So why don't we copy them in having the tall buildings and the clean streets, but not copy them in the thing that they're lacking behind them, which is morality. And I think that's what, in general, the message I want to bring forward. But it's about attitude. Because if Pakistan was a country in Europe, it would be the strongest one. I mean, think of it that way. Because we always think about what's going wrong in our countries, and we maybe compare infrastructures and all these kind of things and medical. But if Pakistan was a country in Europe, it would be, in fact, head and shoulders above all the countries in terms of military capability, population, the sheer resources, and so on. They have actually they have been successful in making us think, or making us believe that we're weaker than we actually are. And what I want to do is, as someone who's lived, born and raised and studied the Western culture and the Islamic culture, and that cultural interaction between the two, I want to go throughout Pakistan and let people know what strength they have. Because it's only when they know that they have that strength that they'll be able to use it.
And Brother Hijab, I would second you on this, because not just because I'm a Pakistani, but the world may see us as a very struggling country. But what they don't see, just like the way Arabs were, that the kind of resilience we have, the kind of issues we're going through,
Yes.
an entire generation is actually learning how to be able to stand up on their own feet,
Yes.
rather than be able to have that stage of, strong men create good times and good men, that kind of thing. And they create, difficult times, and then it creates good, strong men. The idea of how this nation, and we see the prophecy of Rasulullah from him, how people are actually being trained to be able to stand up, and the more they're actually attacking us, the more people are actually moving towards religion.
Yes.
The more they're understanding that their actual identity is towards religion. And you see how the political movement have also inclined towards the very idea.
Yes.
People can have differences with regards to any particular political party, but people are realizing, and I put up a status recently, and people were like, enough is enough. These systems are not going to bring a change. What we can need to go back to is the very teachings, because people are actually realizing this. And I think may Allah protect us, may Allah protect our brothers and all the duat out there. YC plays a very important role, although we're getting a lot of backlash from all corners. But what I see is to be able to bring that chain reaction where people actually start to realize, like, this is where our salvation lies. And I think we need to keep on hitting it. I know we will not free from faults. We'll make a lot of mistakes. A lot of us, may Allah make us of those who are actually be able to make it a case in favor of us. Because if you look at us, Zia, I say this for myself, I'm not sure about you, but incompetent individual, Allah gave me izzah because of religion. I was a musician. I would have been there. I would have been playing an alternative music. I was been like slash fan, doing any sort of, maybe I was into drugs and we were doing it dead by now. But Allah gave me, Allah gave me
and
benefits.
Allah gave all of, not just us individually, but collectively.
Collectively.
Where would Pakistan, Egypt, Turkey, all of these, where would they be without Islam?
True.
If we're being honest about it.
So true.
In fact, this country was based on the fact that this is what's so ironic about it. What's different between Pakistan and India, if not Islam?
True.
The country is based on, really, this is a Muslim nation, and that's what Pakistan's all about. So what I'm saying is, we go back to that. That's where the izzah and that's where the might and the dignity and the self-respect is going to come from.
True. Ziya, before we leave, some precious words.
I'll just maybe conclude with an anecdotal experience again. One of the scholars in Islamabad, I had a meeting with him, and I used to go to his masjid and meet with him and chat with him. And for the longest time, he wasn't able to comprehend our style of dawah. Like how I mean, he never criticized it. He never had objections to it. He just found it peculiar, a little strange, not the traditional method. And it's just a matter of preference. It's not that he was putting a ruling on us that this is haram or makruh or bid'ah or whatever. No, maybe it's not the etiquette of the believer to give dawah in this manner. What happened was there was an opening in one of the leading universities there for an Islamic studies professor. And I put his name in there. And so a call came in and he was asked by the university to join because he had a master's degree and so on. Now, sometimes when we're sitting in a masjid, we're so much involved in this echo chamber where we have righteous people coming to pray 5 times. You give them dars, there is Jummah prayer, there is hadith class going on in the evening, there's tafsir class going on in the morning. So it's a very kosher environment. It's very clean cut. Now, when he got that position for teaching Islamic studies at a very leading university, day one, I think I met him for Asr prayer. And he's like, he was just shocked that he was like, he like signaled to me that please come to me. And when I went to him, and he's like, I got asked the most bizarre question today. I said, what was the question? And he said, this student comes up to me and he says, why should we believe in God? And I was like, okay. So what did you say? He said, what are you supposed to say to something like that?
That's a regular question.
I was like, this is Tuesday for me.
Yeah.
I mean, what you just are describing as a life-altering experience, for me, it's Tuesday. I mean, this is almost on a regular basis. We get these questions, and this is something we deal with on at that point, he was like, you know what? Keep doing what you're doing, because we need people like yourself who have been part of the university system, who've been part of, because you will see that all of the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whenever they would go to their people, they would say, Ya qawmi, Ya qawmi, inabudullah wajtanibut taghut. They would say, oh my people. So who are my people? My people are people in schools, colleges, universities. I understand them. I can relate with them. I know where they're coming from. This is why at Youth Club, we don't judge people like, oh, you've done this, astaghfirullah, you should make repentance. We say, if you've done this, bro, I was worse. I was worse than this. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make me change, bro, you're way better than I am. So alhamdulillah, we're open in that way, and we're trying to call people towards Allah, not trying to push people outside that circle of Islam. We're trying to bring people in.
True.
And for that, you have to do everything within the Sharia that it's, even if it's peculiar, if it's within the Sharia, I think you should be able to do it without any hesitation whatsoever, and leave the results to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because for surely our job is to communicate the message. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who will change the hearts.
True. And a group of mashayikh who recently started having an experience in universities actually called us for dinner as well.
Yes,
and
they did.
And they actually said, of course, they had certain criticism against our methodologies, but I think they were able to understand when they had this experience.
I think overall, whenever we sit with scholars and very senior scholars, I think we get 99% is appreciation, respect, and everything. And of course, we don't claim to be infallible. We make mistakes all the time,
and we're always open for correction.
And they are the like the ulama are the warasa of the anbiya. So if they are guiding us towards something, alhamdulillah, we take their opinion, we respect it. But alhamdulillah, we have other scholars as well who are with us, who we take advice from, counsel from, who are always encouraging us, motivating us, keep doing the good work that you're doing. And I think that's very important to stay connected, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Brother Hijab.
Thank you.
For the lovely conversation.
No,
interesting
honestly.
conversation at the steakhouse.
Yes.
And I hope you are able to work on it. It was a pleasure.
It's amazing how, like, in such a short space of time, I really do feel like one of you guys and you one of me. Like, I feel like family now.
Alhamdulillah. It's like for the
I
sake
feel like
of
we're
Allah.
all really on the same wavelength.
Islam connecting
And I
people,
hope we
unlike
keep on
Nokia.
meeting, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unites us in Jannah as well, and be able to work in this dunya and become a force and amongst the soldiers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was an honor, Brother Hijab.
Honors all mine.
Looking forward to having more activities, inshallah ta'ala. You'll be staying in Pakistan for a while. And Zia bhai, as always, it's a pleasure and an honor. And would like to and love to have you on podcasts again and again.
I'm sure you would.
I'm sure I would. So inshallah, this is it from our side. Inshallah ta'ala. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.